Olá, eu sou Carolina. Se escuta bem? Sim? Então, sou originalmente de Colômbia e há 20 anos mudei para Inglaterra, onde estou a trabalhar agora com Deal. Estou a aprender português, então este é o meu melhor, mas vou a fazer a charla em inglês, ok? Então, me desculpo por isso. Há 2 anos estou agora aqui em Lisboa e estou muito feliz de poder contribuir a Zero Waste. Ok, estamos? Tenho que mudar eu. Ok, tenho muitas coisas para controlar. Então, vou falar mais ou menos por 15 minutos. Realmente, a ideia é falar de como o Deal contribui a esta discussão. And now I'm going to switch to English. So I want to talk about Doughnut Economics and what we do in Deal, Doughnut Economics Action Lab, and how can we support everyone who is working in zero waste. So at Deal, what we would take always from the backstage is to think about the wider context and where we are at this moment in life. So it sets the context to where and why Deal and Doughnut Economics emerges and is situated in. So we are, I'm sure all of you agree, in an era of multiple crises, of lots of different challenges, and this is not changing at the same time, sorry. And we're living through lots of very different challenging things. So for example, financial meltdown. This is an idea that since 2008, probably, many people around the world are suffering and are experiencing the difficulties of an economic situation that is not sustainable. And at the same time, lots of people around the world are suffering multiple crises of climate change. And many countries are going through this. And increasingly, we're finding how different policies and governments are cracking down and repressing our freedom of speech as well. And people's voices to protect what they find is important. And finally, all of us have lived through many difficult years with the pandemic, with the COVID lockdowns, which have affected us physically and mentally. So this is a crisis that is reported around the world in many different ways and is diverse in the global north and in the global south. But where we find that we all come together is how we are all part of the same financial crisis system and of this idea of financial expansion that never ends, and endless use of fossil fuels, of materials that will continue to erode and pollute the nature and the air that we breathe every day. It's up, and I'm losing this, for continued environmental breakdown and also our social structures, which is very turbulent for the future generations. So this is 20th century economics. And what we're finding out is that this is really failing us, right, for many years now, and that we need to recognize that we need this change. So how would it look like to think of the economy of the 21st century? And this is where we situate ourselves in Deal. So back in 2013, sorry, my screen is not working. Kate Raworth, who many of you may know, back in 2017, actually, she launched this book of Doughnut Economics that drew together lots of different thoughts of economics, bringing together ideas of feminist economics, perhaps not very mainstream, but also ecological economics, behavioral economics, and complexity economics, which is very different to the current economy that we have at the moment. And so she wondered, how can we make our economy more sustainable for the changes that we're facing at the moment? And at the center of these ideas, we have the doughnut. So this is the doughnut, a compass that we present and we offer as a compass for humanity in the 21st century, where we recognize that the goal is how do we meet everyone's goals, all of our necessities, without overshooting the boundaries of the planet. So this means leaving no one falling short of our needs, of the essential, no one in the whole, but also how do we make sure that we take care of our planetarium boundaries. So water, good food, health, etc. And this has been crowdsourced by many different organizations around the world. The UN Sustainable Development Goals, which 193 nations signed back in the day, which means that all of us have agreed that this is imperative for our future. So we want to meet the needs of everyone in this social foundation, but at the same time recognize the planetary boundaries, which are also the outcome of very strong scientific research around the world. And as such, the idea is that we learn to live within the donut so that we meet everyone's needs, but at the same time, we recognize that the goal is not only ever endless economic growth, but also progress of humanity. But how do we get there, I guess, is the next question. So it turns out that we're not doing great. No nation is doing well. The red in the middle is showing how billions of people around the world are falling short on the essentials of life, with that being a dimension where everyone needs to meet their needs and is not. And at the same time, we are collectively overshooting now 6 out of those 9 boundaries that you see in the outer ring. And this is, of course, including very dangerous boundaries like chemical pollution and fresh water withdrawals around the world. So we are far out of balance from both sides, social and ecological. And we are the first generation that sees this picture behind me. So it is really our choice whether we want to make a difference and how do we make this difference. We are really carrying that responsibility for future generations. So how can we get humanity into the donut? And donut economics offers 7 different ways to think about this. If you haven't read the book, I'm just going to cover 2 of them, which are the design dynamics that offer guidance and patterns, perhaps more relevant to what we're discussing here today. This is distributive design and regenerative design. So I'm going to talk through the first one. We have inherited, and this is really present in what we're discussing today, a very linear degenerative system thinking from the 20th century, which takes Earth's resources in an exploitative way and makes them into new things that we use for a few days and then we discard. We use them for maybe once or twice, and then we throw them away as waste when they are still a lot of valuable things or materials that we could reuse. And all of these things go very likely into our fields, rivers, lakes, air, lands, and oceans. And these take, make, and use and throw away. It's unsustainable. It's a linear behavior as well, where we decide to not only to produce, but to consume in this way. So we need to turn them around into a circular and regenerative way that goes beyond the reuse, recycling, but to the how do we regenerate? How do we stop extracting what we consume from planet Earth? How can we as consumers consume differently as well as producing differently? So the journey from the generative, not minimizing and eliminating harm, needs to go further into how do we look at nature in a way that it inspires us to learn from how it works in a way in which we can appropriate those processes in what we do. So it's about going beyond eliminating deforestation, for example, or recycling of our plastic, what you would perhaps define as sustainability, but it's about how do we put back what we have taken out, because the future generations will need them. So what would that look like? And you could also think about how do we design these systems and processes? In this example, I have plastics, but you could think of it in fashion and in any field, really. How do you stop from thinking that you recycle, and how do you put it back into regenerative design? The second one is thinking about distribution ways. This is a very design dynamic way of doing things that we have inherited in a very deeply and divisive economic way of thinking from the 20th century. So now we need to give rise to how do we eliminate those huge inequalities that we have in how we decide to shape and run the businesses that we have. So we could be thinking about whenever we're designing a business or a product or consuming it, who is actually owning the sources of all these materials that we have, and who determines who can use them and who owns them, and how do we build around them, who is benefiting from them, and who has access from them, and how can we make sure that the laws and the regulations around them, the infrastructure and the privilege of people can be passed around in a more distributive way. So here, a couple of examples. The journey here is to stop thinking about divisive ways and moving into inclusive ways, but also distributive ways, where businesses rethink their DNA and how they are organizing, so that they create a culture where all the employers, but also the way in which they generate profit, is sustainable in the longer term. So here I have an example of a couple of, living wage, for example, which could be thought of as a sustainable way of improving things. But in reality, it would be more inspiring to think about new companies like Patagonia, perhaps some of you have heard of it, where they have reorganized completely the way in which they work, and nature is part of the people, or as someone really who sits in the boards and makes decisions as well. So here in this example, I just wanted to show some of the current business models that are beginning to emerge, where we can rethink of how do we organize these companies in giving different rights to the factory workers, for example, but also the people who are actually traveling around or who are buying things. And hopefully some of these businesses you can recognize there. So this is really both distributive and regenerative design, and we have a big platform with all of this in a lot more depth that I can cover. So I will go quickly into my next thing. I'm not the expert in business, but my colleague has very kindly prepared a video for all of us to quickly see what I'm talking about in more depth. And again, I will say this is a movement that carries a lot more knowledge than what I have presented today, but I would invite you to join our platform, revisit what we offer. All of what we do is for free, and we're always available for this sort of talks, but also workshops in any way that you may need us. You can join our website as well for free. So now I just want to introduce my colleague, Erin Sahan, who is the business lead at Doughnut Economics, and he's been working hand in hand around the world with organizations that are trying to make this change that we just discussed briefly.
Hi everyone, my name is Erin Sahan. I lead the work at Doughnut Economics Action Lab in helping businesses engage with the concepts of Doughnut Economics. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a practical insight and a bit of an overview. I'm going to build on what you've already heard in terms of the conceptual introduction, maybe repeat a little bit of it, but mostly on ways businesses and those who engage with business can use these tools that we've been creating on Doughnut Economics for the world of business. I'm going to quickly share my slides just to point you towards the main tool that we've created. It's called Doughnut Design for Business, and it is available in 2 different lengths. Essentially, these are guides to run a workshop. So any individual within a company or anyone who works with companies can run a workshop where step by step you explore the key questions that Doughnut Economics raises for you. Central to the tool are these 2 central questions. How does the design of your business block transformative action, and how could a redesign of your business unlock transformative action? Because the goal is getting from that overshoot donut, that divisive, degenerative economy, to the safe and just space of being within the donut, that regenerative and distributive economy that we need to move towards. And to do that, we ask big questions about the deep design of the business itself, its purpose, its networks, its governance, its ownership, and its finance. You can find all of our tools, as well as other policy documents and guidance on using them at doughuteconomics.org within the business and enterprise thematic page. So if you click down the themes and select business and enterprise, you should be able to find all the resources there. So these are quite helpful, hopefully, to navigate your journey through Doughnut Economics. Now, a quick recap. Essentially, we focus on the deep design of business, and we ask people to run a workshop to go through and ask these difficult questions about how to belong to a future economy that truly is regenerative and distributed. We do it because we believe that by redesigning business, you're able to unlock a whole host of advantages. You can help align the purpose of the business across the different teams. For instance, within product design teams, you can make sure that you can enable long-term partnerships that achieve supply chain security. So integrating into your deep design the benefits and the co-sharing of the business's future with the supply chain. You can start to channel investment into the key ideas and innovations that need to happen. So not just focusing on maximizing dividends, but actually designing into the business the ability to invest internally. That's going to be critical. You can make sure that the legacy is locked in so that the ownership over time doesn't bring the business into mission drift and undermine the core purpose of the business. But most importantly, you can help it become regenerative and distributed by design to help create the businesses of the future that will belong to a donut economy. Now, we created this tool by having 22 different pilot workshops with a number of different organizations around the world. Over 300 businesses engaged with us, worked with us to co-create this tool. It's been tested and piloted quite extensively. And we've created a tool that can then be used by any individual within a company. So if you're within a company, please look it up, go to doughnut-economics.org, go to the business and enterprise thematic page and go through our materials to have a bit of an internal reflection on what these questions mean to you. But if you're a consultancy or you're an organization that's an accelerator, or you work with lots of different other businesses, as your clients or as parts of your network, we ask that you register with us as an organization in action. This allows us to make sure that those values-aligned organizations are the ones that are using the tools of Doughnut Economics to drive the ambition and protect the integrity that is really critical to all of this work. You can find all that guidance within the tool itself as well, and on doughnut-economics.org's website. And we hope to see many organizations join the existing inspiring examples that we have among our organizations in action. And lastly, if you go to doughnut-economics.org, you can find a much broader set of tools and guidance on engaging with Doughnut Economics. So we hope this has been helpful, and it builds on some of the key concepts that you've already heard. I look forward to engaging with many of you online and through other means, and seeing you put Doughnut Economics and specifically the transformation of the deep design of business as a central pillar of your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. I'll be here around to take any questions if time allows. But for now, I'll leave you with that on the screen. And I hope that what we've discussed today is useful and inspiring. Thank you.